We have two new releases this week, the Chaos Legionnaires and the Centaurion Marshal. I was not lucky enough to get an early box, hint GW, but others have shared details and I was able to mock up some card images so I could talk about them. Chaos Legionnaires are obviously part of the Chaos Grand Alliance, and the box has a total of 8 fighters. Let's look at the abilities that any Legionnaires can use. First is the faction reaction, Call to Arms. Remember, using one of the reactions costs one of the fighters' action. So, while they are valuable, they don't require ability dice. This reaction can be used when an enemy fighter ends up within 3 inches of your fighter. You then get to pick another friendly fighter within 3 inches and let them make a free move action, as long as they end up within 1 inch of the enemy fighter. A couple of things about this. The requirement is pretty restrictive, but it does let you give up an action from one of your weaker fighters and give it to another fighter who will then have 2 actions left when they activate. The friendly fighter that gets to move doesn't even have to be a Chaos Legionnaire, so you can move something more nasty like the Centaurion Marshal, which we'll talk about later. Now, if you've got a good opponent, this is something that they can try play around. They definitely don't want to accidentally stray into the 3-inch range, but getting into melee is still going to trigger it. This means they'll have to only move into your fighters that have already acted or risk a call to arms. To maximize this, you'll need to keep your fighters close to each other, so going around in groups will be a good idea, although that can be a little bit trickier with this small warband. The warband's quad is Wrath of the First Prince, which gives a bonus attack action and then changes some of the hits into crits. Lots of fighters in this warband have 2/5 damage, and that would be +3 per upgrade. I think an optimistic upgrade would be for 2 of them, 2 upgrades for a total of 6 damage. The universal alternative is Rampage for bonus move and attack. Rampage is going to be better when you have to move to get to the target, but Wrath of the First Prince might make a good finisher. Interestingly, this is probably better against low toughness targets, or at least lower than the strength of weapon, so they'll get more hits on average, something to keep an eye out for. The leader of this warband is the Decuriarch. They're similar to many of the Warcry box leaders, coming in at 170 points. Each of those models has a minor boost somewhere from the baseline, and in this case it's survivability, with an extra point of toughness and an extra 2 points of health. The average damage that I've got here on screen was calculated with Warcry Stats Hammer, link in the notes. There will always be 3 numbers depending on the target's toughness, lower than the weapon strength, equal to weapon strength, or higher. Keep that in mind. The Decuriarch is a good all-rounder. He's got 4 dice, hits do 2 damage, and strength 4 equals the most common toughness. With a typical 6 damage for an attack, he'll need to get lucky for 1 turn kills, but anything that survives won't last that 2nd turn against him. The Decuriarch does have 2 abilities only they can use. The first is a double, Dark Pact. Picking a target within 12 inches, which is a healthy range, you roll dice equal to the ability, and each dice, 3+, does a point damage. So you can assume for every 3 dice rolled, on average you'll get 2 damage. In return, you do take D3 damage points, so probably about the same. This isn't a super fast warband, and it doesn't have any range, so being able to just pick a target for the last point or 2 of health is a handy option to have. The second Decuriarch ability is the True Master's Favour. You need to actually kill a target with the Decuriarch to be able to use it, but if you do, it'll give 1 attack to every one of your fighters in 9 inches. That's a massive area, especially when you consider the board is 22 by 30 inches, and this is an 18-inch diameter centered on the Decuriarch. If they're mixing up things in the center of the board, chances are this will boost your entire warband. There's a third ability for the Decuriarch related to the Bulwark Runemark. So let's first look at the other fighters of the Bulwark Runemark, the Hornshield. This is the cheapest model in the warband at 95 points, and is armed with a shield and a melee weapon. The weapon is either a sword, axe, or mace, with the mace costing an extra 5 points. Having played the original Warcry box, I was a little worried that these would be like the Iron Golem Legionnaires, so I pulled out the old card to see. They're the same speed and toughness, with the Hornshield 2 health higher. Survivability wasn't the problem though, it was damage. The old Iron Golem was 2 dice, 3 strength, and 1/3 damage. So everything is better here. There are 3 varieties, as we said. The mace is better across the board, but the sword and axe are still solid. The sword is slightly better at chaff, while the axe is a better all-rounder. The Bulwark Runemark gives the Hornshield and the Decuriarch access to the double shield ramp. So you finish your move and target an enemy in melee range. Roll a single dice, 1, 2, 3, nothing happens, 3, 4 do 1 damage, and 6 is damage equal to the ability dice. Not very inspiring, but if you have an enemy in 1 health, there's no harm taking the 50-50 chance to kill them. Next up is the Mutandor, who comes with only 1 option, a Beast Spear. This has range 2, which is the furthest any of the Legionnaires will go, At move 5 he's also the fastest in the Warband. With strength 5 and 2/5 damage he's actually pretty dangerous. But he's also one of the more expensive options at 145 points. His Berserk rune mark gives him the ability to Headlong charge. After he double moves, he can then use this ability to attack, giving him a threat range of 12 inches, which is pretty impressive. It is a triple though, but overall this is a respectable fighter. Next up is the Hornhelm with 2 options. The 2-handed Dark Iron Mace at 120, or the 2-handed Steel Bite Axe at 125 points. These are mid-range fighters with 18 health, but they're doing hero level damage. Targeting a 4 toughness fighter, the Hornhelm with Steel Axe is doing the same damage as the Decuriarch. Notably, the Steel Axe has 2/6 damage, making it a decent target for the quad Wrath of the First Prince ability, turning a few 3+ hits doing 2 damage into crits doing 6 damage instead. The Brute rune mark opens up another double, Brutal Swing. Crits are increased by 1 to 3 damage for the next attack. As the Hornhelms have 3 attack dice, they're just under a 50-50 chance of getting at least 1 crit. The other option is to use the universal ability Onslaught, which will add an extra dice, upping the average damage to 2 or 3 anyway. So, maybe not so great. Okay, let's look at the entire Warband. This is what it looks like if you assemble based on the box art. 1 of each weapon and 2 of the Steel Bite Axes. It comes to a total of 985, so there is some range for upgrades if you want to, changing the Dark Iron Mace to an axe for example, and 2 of the Hornshield to maces, and you've got exactly 1000 points. This definitely isn't a fast Warband, which is probably going to be its weakness. Pretty much everything is at 4 move apart from the Mutandor. There's only 1 in the box, but if you were to get multiple boxes, might be an option for a slightly faster Warband. Don't forget the call to arms reaction though. Not going to get you to an objective, but it is extra mobility to bring force to bear, and the fighter that gains the bonus move will still have those 2 actions to attack with. With the damage these weapons can put out, that's going to hurt. The Warband is tough as hell, the lowest health is 12, and those fighters have toughness 5. The weakest units with toughness 4 have at least 18 health, so this will be pretty scary to actually face against. Looking at the sprues, you do seem to have a full range of options, so you can go all axes if you want, or a full mix. It also looks like they've got a decent range of helmets, which is pretty cool, so hopefully a second box will have some variety if you need to go that way. Next up, the Centaurion Marshal, the big boy. This is a Chaos ally, but he is thematically linked to the Chaos Legionnaires Warband. At 295 points, he's taking up a good chunk of your 1000 points, but he's bringing a lot. He's move 10, but that is mounted, meaning he can't climb unless there are stairs. Depending on the scenery used, that could be a problem. He is chunky with toughness 5 and 35 wounds. He's got 2 different attack options, a melee attack and a slightly weaker ranged 3 attack. In the last video, where I put together my own Tame Beast list, I talked a little about the dragon type characters, and how there really wasn't a good fit for Chaos. The Marshal is it. We'd certainly prefer him to be a flyer, but 10 move and the kind of damage profile that stacks up with the Squig Hopper Boss and the Vargoyle is great to see. He comes with his own set of abilities unique to the Marshal. The first is the reaction Cruel Strike, which triggers when someone within 1 inch disengages. Now you are giving up an action for this, which could be a move 10 or a big attack, so I have to question if it's worth wasting an action. That said, it's got a high chance of doing d6 damage, and if that kills a fighter, then he doesn't get to take whatever his next action would be. The double is Marshal's Net. It's a 3+ chance to stop a target from disengaging. This is something you'll probably do after you didn't manage to kill the target, but needed to stay in place instead. Given the importance of maneuverability, this can be a big thing. The triple is Trampling Charge, similar to the Chaos Legionnaires' Shield Ram. You do get to do some damage after moving. Unlike Shield Ram, the damage here is guaranteed and fixed. Last is the Quad. I have a lot of fun with the first Fang in the Untamed Beasts, and being able to drag people around is hilarious. Unfortunately, this isn't guaranteed. You need to score a crit to actually pull the target. In addition, the second attack only happens if you did move the enemy fighter and they ended up within 1 inch. This means sometimes you'll spend this quad and all it'll give you is an extra attack. In cases like that, maybe the simple rampage with move and attack is going to be much better. Still, it is a nice option to have. At the end of the Marshal's activation, if you still have a target within 3 inches, you could get an extra 2 attacks out of this. Now, if we picked up both these boxes, what would it look like? The Decuriarch and the Marshal, of course. The Mutandor gets cut as the most expensive model. 2 Hornhelms and 3 Hornshield perfectly round out the numbers. Here I've gone for all axes as I prefer the higher strength. Switching a Hornhelm to a mace will let you get a Hornshield to a mace also. So another option would be to have 4 maces, leaving 1 Hornshield to make up the points with an axe or sword. For battle groups, we can easily split 2 in each and then have a third for one of the groups. Recommendation is to put the hard hitters into the dagger, so we put the Decuriarch there for sure because we want him in the center for his triple. We'll also add in a Hornhelm for punch and a Hornshield to spread them around. Our Marshal is the fastest and he goes in the hammer along with a second Hornshield. The remaining Hornhelm and Hornshield will go in the shield. Then we will do our best to use a Hornshield to trigger the call to arms. And then that will let us get one of our big hitters into combat with 2 actions remaining. Yeah, this list looks like it could be a lot of fun. Excuse me while I go pre-order the models. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and comment.